Hello and welcome back to Personality City's YouTube channel. My name is Jenna and today we're going to be talking about the last dichotomy within the Myers-Briggs personality system, which is judging versus perceiving. So if you're kind of stuck between types and you don't know which one you are, you don't know where you fall on one or more letters, you can watch any of the other breakdowns in this series between introversion versus extroversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and now here judging versus perceiving. So if you're kind of stuck between one or more of those letters, feel free to watch any of those other videos and hopefully that'll help determine maybe where you fall. But here we're going to break down judging versus perceiving. So we have talked a little bit about cognitive functions, just sprinkling it in here or there and hopefully bite-sized chunks for us to learn a little bit more deeply about Carl Jung's psychological concepts. Thankfully, we had Isabel Briggs Myers and Catherine Briggs to teach us a little bit more plainly what our roadmap might be to those cognitive functions. And so that's how we have those 4 letters, and that 4-letter system is thanks to that mother-daughter duo who created the system. Now, judging and perceiving. Judging is used here in a Jungian sense, in a psychological sense. So it isn't the way that we think of judging as in judgmental. Judging has to do more so with decision making, and perceiving has to do more so with taking in information. So someone who is primarily a judger is going to be someone who prefers that decisions be made before they take action. Perceivers, on the other hand, prefer to take action before decisions are made. So judgers will be more prone to have their external world organized because they want their world in order so that internally they can organize what is happening and make a decision after the rest is already settled. And perceivers, on the other hand, will usually have a disorderly environment because their internal world is doing the organizing and they're fairly organized internally, but externally it won't necessarily reflect that because they don't need their external world to be organized in order for their internal world to be organized. The judging functions are actually the decision-making functions within the 8 cognitive functions. So the decision-making functions are going to be the thinking and feeling functions. So extroverted thinking, introverted thinking, extroverted feeling, and introverted feeling are the 4 judging functions within the 8 cognitive functions. Now the perceiving functions will take in information as opposed to making a decision because perceivers prefer to leave their options open and to take in information. And so the 4 perceiving functions within the 8 cognitive functions are extroverted intuition and introverted intuition, and extroverted sensing and introverted sensing. This hopefully so far is painting a little bit clearer of a picture of where you might fall, whether as a judger or as a perceiver. But let me break down the difference between the 2. Judgers more typically are organized. They are great planners, decision makers, they're decisive, and perceivers, on the other hand, are a little bit more easygoing. They are not as punctual. They're a little bit more lenient with themselves in terms of decision makings, and they like to keep their options open. So whereas judgers will prefer to have a plan in place, perceivers will prefer to keep the future open-ended so that they can make the best informed decision with all the information they have, knowing that they're going to be taking in information. When you look at the Myers-Briggs, all 16 types, there's going to be 8 who are judgers and 8 who are perceivers. And the judger types will have a J at the end, perceivers will have a P. So when you're looking at cognitive patterns between the 16 Myers-Briggs types, you can see that judgers will have an extroverted decision-making process, either as their dominant or their co-pilot. So they will have either extroverted thinking or extroverted feeling as their dominant or their co-pilot function. Whereas on the other hand, perceivers, they're going to have an extroverted perceiving function as either their dominant or their co-pilot function. So they will either have extroverted sensing or they'll have extroverted intuition in either their dominant place or their co-pilot place. Now, if all of this cognitive function talk is a little bit dicey still, don't worry about it. It can be a little bit dense to understand, but just taking it in small bite-sized chunks can really help, because we'll dive in a little bit later into what that looks like for each of the 16 personality types in terms of cognitive functions, because that's where it really comes alive. So to read those descriptions about what you might be, you can always visit personality.city, which is the website I created with personality type descriptions for each of the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types and each of the 9 Enneagram types. So you can go ahead, and if you're, you know your type, or if you're between like 2 to 3, then you can go into those type descriptions and you can read about the cognitive functions specifically within each of those. And you can see signs, like 10 signs that you have a certain function as your dominant or a certain function as your co-pilot, and that will really help you determine which cognitive functions are your dominant, co-pilot, tertiary, and inferior, and it'll help you land on your final type. Now, if there is something that helps you determine whether you are a judger or whether you are a perceiver, please feel free to comment that below and share what your full type is, any tips or tricks for other people who aren't too sure whether they're a perceiver or whether they're a judger in the Myers-Briggs system. And as always, if you have something more that you would like to contribute to this thought between judging and perceiving, you can feel free to email me at personalitycity@gmail.com, where I will be answering and reading more long-winded questions that relate to personality typology. I love the conversation around personality typology. I think it is an incredible system that helps each person to not only get to know themselves better, but to get to know people better within the world around them. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to turn on bell notifications to get notified when this video is posted every single Monday on this channel. And please like and subscribe, and I cannot wait to catch you on the next one.